Hello and welcome to all viewers and listeners. It's News for Scotland, recording on 24th April with Jeanette Hill and myself, Yvonne Alexis. Yesterday was a difficult one for the Scottish Government as many headline issues came to the fore. First, there was the Government's response to the CAS review. Public Health Minister Jenny Minto finally gave the Government's response yesterday. Perhaps unsurprisingly, she said it needs time to digest the near 400-page document, but that a multidisciplinary team led by the Chief Medical Officer will be convened to examine the clinical recommendations of the paper and how they may apply to Scotland. Labour dismissed this response as a sop to the Greens, who, despite not being medical experts themselves, have questioned CAS's authority. With regard to the Horizon scandal, Justice Secretary Angela Constance went on the offensive, accusing the UK government of outrageous behaviour after it was confirmed that legislation exonerating Post Office Horizon victims will be extended to Northern Ireland but not to Scotland. Yes. The UK government cited the fact that Scotland had its own separate legislature, but that wasn't enough to prevent the backlash. It was also confirmed that the Scottish Government proposed legislative response would have to wait until after the UK Government had published its response, all of which amounts to a long wait for the postmasters affected. In other legal news, I just lost something there. In other legal news, the proposal to introduce judge-only trials for rape has been hampered by 6 SNP MSPs abstaining from the Stage 1 vote on the Victims, Witnesses and Justice Reform Bill. The proposal will, however, go forward to the next stage after the Government narrowly won the vote. And scandalously, following the recent charges of embezzlement of party funds brought against her husband Peter Murrell, Nicola Sturgeon's appearance before the UK Parliament's Scottish Affairs Committee has been postponed at her request. The former First Minister was due to appear before the committee next week as part of its inquiry into intergovernmental regulations. Murrell was rearrested and questioned by police on Thursday in connection with the Operation Branchform investigation into the SNP's finances. He was charged that evening, a statement from Police Scotland confirmed. He subsequently resigned his party membership. The Scottish Affairs Committee has previously taken evidence from former First Minister Alex Salmond and Constitution Secretary Angus Robertson, among others. The inquiry marks 25 years since the re-establishment of the Scottish Parliament. SNP members do not want or need a vote on whether to continue the Bute House agreement with the Scottish Greens, First Minister Humza Yousaf has said. His comments come as the Greens prepare for an emergency meeting on whether they wish to continue in government. Yousaf said the SNP rank and file had already had a vote on the deal and that he had won the leadership election last year, having pledged to maintain it. He added, "I don't think a vote is what SNP members necessarily want at this time, or indeed need at this time. What we have to go on with is governing in the best interests of the people of Scotland, and I've thoroughly not just enjoyed, but I think achieved a lot with our Green colleagues. I hope that agreement will continue, and I hope that Green members will also see the benefit of that cooperation." The emergency meeting was called after a number of Green members became disillusioned with the deal after the scrapping of a key climate target and the announcement that puberty-suppressing hormones would no longer be given to teenagers. The Bute House agreement was signed after the 2021 election and brought co-leaders Partick Harvey and Lorna Slater into government as junior ministers. It is understood the pair, alongside fellow MSP Ross Greer, are urging members to back the deal. But others, including former party co-chair Ellie Gomersall and Edinburgh councillor Chas Booth, have called on members to vote against its continuation. Let's look at Rwanda now. The Law Society of Scotland has raised serious concerns about the likely legal ramifications of the UK government's Safety of Rwanda Asylum and Immigration Bill. The professional body for Scottish solicitors has made a brief submission on the bill ahead of its rushed second reading, just 5 days after it was introduced to the UK Parliament. The legislation is part of the UK government's response to the UK Supreme Court's unanimous ruling last month that the policy to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda is unlawful. Law Society of Scotland President Sheila Webster said, "We are very concerned about this bill, and particularly sections that would undermine the independence of our judiciary, along with the UK's commitment to human rights and international law. Our international reputation is in jeopardy." The ministerial statement accompanying this bill, that he's unable to say is compatible with the European Convention on Human Rights, puts it in a legally precarious position. The UK must comply with its international obligations or be in breach of the rule of law. Judicial independence from executive government is a fundamental part of our democracy. That separation of powers is contradicted by the bill's proposal for the government, rather than courts to decide whether to comply with interim measures from the European Court of Human Rights. That's the main brief news from the Scottish Parliament at the moment, and we're going to go back now and look at surrogacy, the surrogacy issue, which we discussed last week in the programme. However, we've had a few comments back from our viewers and listeners, one in particular from an organisation called Surrogacy Concern, who are concerned that the UK and Scots law is being altered to allow the practice of surrogacy to grow. At the moment, a woman may carry a child contracted, I'm going to use these inverted colons here, may carry a child contracted to another couple and be paid up to £10,000 in reasonable expenses based on the Surrogacy Agreements Act of 1985. The law in this country does not allow professional surrogacy, although there is nothing to stop a couple bringing a surrogate child in from abroad. Recently, however, the Scottish and UK law commissions have recommended liberalising the surrogacy process. Proposed changes include making it easier and quicker to remove the birth mother's name from the birth certificate, to allow open advertising for surrogate mothers to come forward at a minimum age of 21, and the creation of surrogacy agencies, RSOs, as in regulated surrogacy organisations. These regulating bodies, unlike those in charge of fostering and adoption, would not be overseen either by qualified social workers or the family courts. Helen Gibson from Surrogacy Concern UK argued that the law commissions have ignored objections to proposed reforms. She pointed out in an article she wrote for The Critic magazine that most of the responses given to the law commission's reform plans were against it. In fact, some women's groups argued that the law should be tightened and not relaxed. However, despite a clear lack of public support, authorities in Scotland and in the rest of the UK seem determined to steam ahead and encourage the surrogacy trade. For Surrogacy Concern UK, it's simple. Surrogacy is a new form of child trafficking. For many others, it's a way to safely and happily deliver a child to those desirous of being parents. It's interesting that no discussion around surrogacy seems to involve the possibility of adoption as an option, yet many children from birth upwards live in the care system for many years. Would it make more sense to encourage prospective parents down this avenue? If you have views on this, we really appreciate you sending them in to us and possibly coming in to talk to us about them. Now, I'm going to talk about floating wind farms, which are being proposed to be developed off the Aberdeenshire coast. The First Minister said that Scotland is one of the best places in the world to develop offshore wind and the supply chain which goes with it. It's a pity they can't just stop the wind blowing when they're doing that. But anyway, the new wind farm will have 35 giant turbines and can generate 560 MW of power. I'm saying MW, I have no idea what that means.
Megawatts, I think.
Macrowatts? Megawatts. That sounds more like it. As well as supplying the domestic grid, this plant also has a role in greening the oil and gas platforms. I think that's a bit ironic, given what the oil and gas platforms are actually doing, but we won't go down that route right now. These are themselves usually powered by diesel generators. Now that can be replaced by green electricity. The project will be built by Greenvolt, which is a joint venture comprising Flotation Energy from Aberdeen and Vargrom from Norway. The project will cost around $3 billion. It will create hundreds of jobs and position Scotland as a world leader in floating energy production. Olav Hetland of Hargon said that floating wind is said to be a huge global market in the coming decades, and that Scotland is now positioned to host world-leading expertise in this pioneering technology. I'm sorry that I have to laugh at floating wind. Okay.
Sounds great though.
I think now Jeanette is going to talk to us much more seriously about things than I, who couldn't stop laughing.
Not necessarily. I am going to talk a little bit about Sunak's plans for people with disabilities, people who are sick, if you like. So the IMF actually have said that Britain has to look at the quality of its healthcare and also how disability is reported. So we think that's probably the reason why Sunak has suddenly come out with this sick note culture image that he's been out there sharing with the mainstream media, and you get such headlines have been in the Daily Mail, obviously, and the Guardian even, and the Independent were called Britain is a sick note culture. That's what we're being sold. So even I've seen even headlines that say things like Britain is work shy. Are you kidding us? And also that we're in a post-COVID health crisis. And the IMF are going to grill the UK on this record of 2.8 million people signed off sick. Many of these long-term sick. So the IMF comments probably sparked Prime Minister, as I said, Sunak's crackdown, as he termed it, on the surging health benefit. Either that, or was it just electioneering again? So this bill that's going to be coming out is, despite this bill, the health benefits bill, despite having some of the worst sickness benefits in Europe, we have this big bill. When you look at our statutory sick pay, it's something like £116 a week paid by your employer for 28 weeks. Or alternatively, people might claim employment support allowance, which is means tested after 6 months. But it varies between £90 and £138 for long-term sickness, so it's not exactly luxury living on our sick benefits. They certainly are worse than quite a lot of other European countries. But labour inactivity, certainly for an economy, does affect, obviously, productivity, and we have cuts in national insurance and tax contributions because of it. So looking specifically at Scotland, then, what's our labour position? So labour inactivity, according to Scotland's Labour Market Overview, which was published in December 2023 by the Scottish Government. We have economic inactivity in Scotland varies by age group. So 16 to 24-year-olds are the biggest group, but when you look at the fact that Scotland has more of those in education of various different kinds, then you can see why economic inactivity is higher than the rest of the UK for that age group. In Scotland, the other main reason given for being inactive, economically inactive, was long-term sick. So between October 22 and September 23, we had 31.7% of all the people that were off sick were considered long-term sick. Yeah. So but the employment rate generally in Scotland is lower for men than it is for women, but it's lower for men than it is in the UK. So we've got 74.3% of men between 16 and 64 in employment, but we've got in the UK, we've got 75.7% of those men. For women, however, in Scotland, we are much higher than the UK average in terms of women's employment. Of course, when we look at employment of rates for men, apart from taking, as I said, the youngsters who are in college out of that statistic, you've also got to look at long-term sick for our older men, especially those that have been in sort of traditional industries and things like that are obviously going to increase their morbidity rates, their long-term illness rates. In terms of disability employment, we have made that gap, if you think. There's always a gap, between disability employment and people who consider themselves not to have a disability in employment. So in 2014, we were sitting at 38.2% of people with disabilities in employment, and now we're looking at something like 54, I think, percent it is. So we have certainly decreased that disability gap in employment. So we're doing something right to help people with disabilities getting into work. So what sort of solutions are put forward by Sunak then to end this sick note culture image that he has created? Well, Sunak just seems to be blaming the claimants yet again. So he's saying it's their fault. We've got high taxes and we've got economic problems. It's all the fault of claimants. It seems like the same old argument that we've heard before. And this is backed by, in fact, it was put forward really by the right-wing think tank, the Centre for Social Justice. It sounds almost kind, doesn't it? Until you find out that it was founded by IDS, Ian Duncan Smith. So the 5 welfare reforms that they push forward really, and that Sunak has taken up on, is that GPs have not to do your sick note anymore. Apparently they're far too lenient, according to the think tank, and it's too much of a burden for them too. All points which are hotly contested by GP organisations. Also, the work capability assessment, anybody who's been on ESA will know about that one, has to be made harder to pass, which already is under attack by mental health charities, etc., saying it's already incredibly hard to get through that work capability assessment. Also, the third thing they want to be doing is increasing work requirements for those on universal credit. And fourthly, this does not affect Scotland because we are over to the Adult Disability Award. We don't have PIP anymore in Scotland, except for people who are trans, who are moving from PIP to, transferring from PIP to our Adult Disability benefit. But they have put forward this idea that PIP shouldn't be a cash benefit anymore. And what Sunak said, to my shock, was, well, things like wheelchairs and changing your shower room or whatever, it's just a one-off payment. So really you don't need an ongoing payment because you've got a disability. Oh my. Those with disabilities, of course, many disability organisations have strongly contested that. Of course, you constantly have, maybe you can't work full-time because you have a disability. Maybe you have to have taxis different places, you have to have deliveries, you have to have somebody in to do your housework or whatever. There's a whole range of different extra expenses because you have a variety of disabilities. So also the DWP's powers have to be strengthened. Powers have already seen to look into your bank account, to arrest you, to fine you, to seize your goods. So what helps and what doesn't help in the attempt to get people with disabilities back into work or people with long-term illnesses? Well, what helps, and this is coming from many disability organisations have said this, and lots of charities as well have said it, genuine sources of help like the Access to Work scheme, which you can contact the DWP, actually, Access to Work scheme, if you need somebody to support you to get into work. That people genuinely say that is very supportive and does help you stay in a job. Flexible working arrangements, we had some over COVID. Disabled people have been asking for those flexible working arrangements for a very long time. And actually, most big organisations found that their sickness record went way down during the sort of working from home and all that sort of stuff that people were able to do. Flexible working arrangements, and people still have that in many organisations. Access to quick, flexible, supportive healthcare, including mental health services, physio, occupational health, community nurse services, orthopaedic care, and specific services for long-term conditions like long COVID or asthma or ME. All those things help people with disabilities stay in work. Now, what doesn't help, in my opinion, is scandalous treatment by private contracted assessors. Claimant support organisations such as Benefit and Work have detailed over the last 20 years the appalling treatment of claimants, including those who have died after denial of benefits, from reports that have been put forward by privately contracted assessors. So numerous times folk have been labelled fit to work and subsequently have died. And the DWP confirmed that more weight would be placed on these reports from these private assessors than there would be from other clinical evidence. So this is found in ESA decisions now. And so the idea that these contractors now are going to provide your sick notes instead of your GP doesn't make me feel that this system will be in any way helpful and will inevitably lead to more fear, more anxiety, and maybe even more deaths. The Fit Note experiment, what work you can do, was a failure, as 94% was still signed off completely. Your GP understands the reality of work and the reality of people's illnesses, and quite rightly do not want to contribute to making people worse, making their patients worse, or maybe even contributing to their death, such as the gentleman with type 1 diabetes who was advised by his GP to go off sick, but financially couldn't afford it and subsequently died as he was unable to get the facilities or time to maintain his medication, his diet and his consultations. So now this is to be removed from GPs to people who may not even be medically qualified. Most disability rights groups and charities such as the MS Society, the Macmillan Charity for Cancer, suggested that this means far more stress on people already dealing with tough life crisis. You've just been told you have some sort of cancer and you know you still got to keep your work in, but you want to have a sick note so that you get the 6 weeks off or whatever. You're having chemo, you're really ill one point, and now you have to go to an assessor to get that sick note instead of your GP. I just can't even imagine that scenario. How horrific would that be? If you don't take up the extra work on universal credit that's going to be out there, then you're going to lose your benefits. And anybody who's been on benefits knows you really need these to survive. So the idea of losing your benefits, losing your council tax benefit, losing your housing benefit is pretty horrific. You know, in a matter of months, you're in a deep state of debt. So this new, yet more tough love approach is already used with Job Seekers Alliance, who routinely sanction people for the slightest reason, late for an appointment. Or one person told me last year that they were sanctioned because they went to an interview that they'd arranged and they didn't go to the job centre interview that was arranged on the same day, which they didn't really find out about in time. And they were given 12 weeks sanctions because they didn't go to the job centre interview. You just can't believe the madness of that. Lucky for him, he got the job that he went for. But my God, how crazy, in my opinion. And have we learned nothing from Daniel Blake, It all seems yet another Tory approach of kick the poorest. I see no private contractors brought in to target the billions lost in tax avoidance. No heavy-handed policies to that group. No real attempt at wealth tax or attempts to reclaim shareholders' profits. These figures far outweigh any benefits bill. The billions lost in unclaimed benefits such as attendance allowance, pension credit is not mentioned, or the billions saved from the pension bill with the change in pension age, 6 years for us WASPies, and the falling mortality rate that we have for the first time for a very long time. We've got falling mortality rates. The Charitable Health Foundation said last week that by 2040, inequalities mean that 3.7 million people will be living with major illnesses, long-term illnesses, such as type 2 diabetes, chronic pain, and in depression. So Sunak suggests it's young people parked on welfare, but the majority of people receiving statutory sick pay are actually women over 50 working part-time, according to the Resolution Foundation. Retired GP Dr. Brian Fisher summed things up by saying, "This all seems part of a narrative of blaming people for their illnesses rather than supporting them in their hour of need. The welfare state was meant to be that supportive umbrella, that protective net for people. And instead, people are just getting blamed and called the undeserving sick. So what will replace GPs, he said, looks like those private companies that have not got a very good reputation at all from what they've done previously with the PIPA assessments. And then he named somebody, Stephen Carey, who died by suicide after losing an appeal against the Department of Work and Pensions, and he was bipolar. And on his benefits, he lost the appeal and he died by suicide. And there are many others. You can find them on the Benefits and Works website. They give you the statistics on how many people that this has happened. Atos, a private company managing assistance with disability payments on DWP, have handled cases very poorly. In fact, coroners have said they are part of the problem and actually triggered people's suicide or other deaths. Coroners have reported this. So are they going to get more of our money to do this? Again, for people on sickness benefit and for the sick notes, GP sick notes. You can't believe it. What they're going to come up with next. Can I cynically suggest it's blame people on benefits or blame people on boats, neither of whom have caused the trouble this country is currently in? And is it just a last attempt to cling to power by a party going into free fall, despite the millions from donors keeping them up?
Wow.
It's obviously my opinion.
Well, that was very interesting, actually. Lots of things I didn't know about from there.
You can't believe it, what they're up to. Is it me again? Oh, no.
I believe it is. Yeah.
I've got to find the other one, though. Bear with me. We'll talk about this later. I know it's shocking. When you read it, you think, no, they can't be doing that. And then there they are. They are doing it.
Yes. And we seem to be letting them.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, really? Yeah, that's it. That's it. Are we going to keep letting them? Yeah, let's hope not. I don't know what this is doing. This is doing something very swanky. I like the old laptop. Oh, it's probably a bit. Come on. I have no idea what it means. Let's see if we can open that one. Yay! There we go. So I've decided to do a wee report, and some people were asking me on the on our Facebook page, and also I thought it was useful because I read a little bit about Johnny Vegas, Michael Pennington, I think is his proper name, saying he was involved in a major project, and he had a bit of a sort of breakdown, and he had been diagnosed not that long ago with ADHD, which he said it made sense for lots of things that were going on in his life. But this is why, because there is a lot more people, adults, being diagnosed as for ADHD, so that's why I thought I'd do a wee report on it. It's something that's important to me, which will become clear in a bit. So also I read about Christine McGuinness talking about she'd not long ago been diagnosed with autism, and some people say both these conditions are related. And it was equally sort of moving, I think, to hear both of their stories about it, hear both their experiences. And they both said it explained their sort of lives a bit and patterns in their lives and their past behaviours. Some good, some not so bad. But Johnny Vegas was quite good. He was saying that chaos that his head's always in seems to make him be a better stand-up comedian, which is probably true. Although he did say also coping with the disorganisation and leaving sort of basic tasks hard to manage, yeah. And no filter or focus, as he said, can be exhausting. 4,000 ideas in your head at the one time, many of them brilliant, but still makes for a head that can't even ever be still. And the stress and anxiety is hard to deal with and makes jobs and relationships a trial, as well as, I think, autism, you know, in a different way. But many say the conditions are linked, but coping with that overload from your senses can make full-time work difficult, yeah. So Tony Lloyd from the ADHD Foundation said the condition is significantly under-identified and diagnosed in the UK, and perhaps 1 in 20 have the condition. Its patterns and symptoms vary, so it's not always obvious when you look up the NHS or say what the patterns are, the symptoms. That's not always obvious that you fit into that. And you might have some of the symptoms and not all of them, absolutely. And yet it does vary depending on gender, depending on environment, depending on your culture. But if you think you or your child have got it, then obviously the first thing you do is talk to your GP, or indeed if the child's at school, you can talk to the SENCO, the Special Educational Needs Coordinator there. A GP doesn't formally diagnose ADHD. What they do is they if they listen to you, and they may ask you to do a diary, get some reports, to come back to them after so long, after you've tried different things. They'll talk to you, say if you've got any other things happening to you, they'll look at your family history. They might obviously be wanting to know about other health conditions before they will refer you to a specialist if they think, yes, this is maybe something that somebody else has to look at to see if you have this. If your GP thinks your child has got it, they'll ask you to do this thing called watchful waiting, which is about 10 weeks. And that seems, a long time for a lot of parents who really want help right away, but it can be really useful. ADHD charities do say that watchful waiting can be useful. Some argue against it, but mostly say it can be useful. And also they talk about this thing called group-based ADHD-focused parent training. And if somebody says that to you, you immediately think, oh, I'm a bad parent, as people often do when they've got a child with an illness, of a whole variety of illnesses. They might, or a condition, or ADHD isn't an illness, obviously, but if any, your child suddenly has got something that you think is wrong with them, whatever that means, then the parent often feels to blame and feels bad about it. But this focused parent training is really not saying that at all. It's just saying there are some techniques that we know might help you, help your child with whatever it is that's making life difficult for them. As many symptoms of ADHD do make life difficult. And obviously you've got insensitive folk maybe round about you that are saying, oh, well, yeah, it's all your fault, what you ought to do is. And that doesn't help us at all. But I think these group-based parent groups can be useful, even just to talk to other parents that are going through the same thing as you are. So it wasn't about when my son was in primary school. He had a terrible time in primary school. It was very much focused on it was either my fault or his fault, or, even when he was a wee laddie, 5, 4, 6, it was classic one was when we were called in yet again to the heads, and the head told his dad that he was very immature. And his dad replied with that immortal line, yes, I find 6-year-olds are. What's your excuse? Which I thought was absolutely brilliant. But my boy found primary school really hard going. He really did. He didn't seem to make any allowances for any of his differences. Despite him being quite a kind wee soul, he was never frightened, he was never bullying, he was never really rude to the staff or anything like that. Just mainly couldn't sit still or concentrate on anything. He found everything boring. There was lots of twitching, lots of tapping at things and moving things a bit. His mammy does the same. Getting out of his seat when he shouldn't have got out of his seat. The staring out the window syndrome, I think my brother called it, and he sympathised because he said he was much the same. Secondary was very different for him. He had it tough, a tough yet very understanding deputy head who knew immediately he had ADHD. She just, within sort of a short time of knowing him, she, and we helped us get that diagnosis and worked with us to help come up with helpful strategies that helped him get through school. And he got a reasonable lot of qualifications there. And, he was generally okay in secondary school. It was an awful lot better than primary. It helped that his school also had lots of kids with English as a second language. So there was lots of learning support staff in the class, and him being a very sociable ADHDer, he was liked by most of the support workers, and the wonderful Miss Mia, I should call her, who was his tutor all the way to school, who was just, so she just read up loads and loads of stuff about the condition and really helped him, and and back then it's a long time ago because I'm an old woman and he's an old boy now. She really did help. She was understand the needs and abilities of anyone who does not fit in the mainstream round hole, and it's absolutely essential that tutors and school staff do that, and we do that as well. We can't just go bashing square pegs till they fit into round holes. We really have to change that, change the hole that they're getting bashed into. So who you're referred to depends on your age and what's available in your local area. There's no simple test, but there will be a physical examination just to see if there's anything physical going on, a series of interviews and reports, and usually you get also good reports, even if you go as an adult, from other people in your life, maybe your parents or maybe friends or siblings or something that might know how your life has been, and they can sort of look at the life story as an adult, and they can see what that shows, that you probably do have ADHD. It does help them. Now there's different ways of dealing with it. There's the straightforward medical model, which is looking at, it's a chemical imbalance and here you go, take these medication and that's going to help you. And, I'm not completely throwing that out the window because I think that does help. The medication does help lots of people. There may be things like, I think they're called methamphetamine, is that right? Dexamphetamine, my God. And as well as other ones, there's quite a few out there. There's about 5 different types of medical treatments, medical intervention, drug intervention, if you like. And they do often help people calm down the impulses and make people feel calmer, help them practice new skills to work with other symptoms that they have. There are obviously side effects, quite some serious side effects of that. So if it's your child and whatever, obviously any sensible parent will be looking into what all the side effects are and whether or not they want to do that. There's more of a psychological model where we look at therapies such as psychoeducation, which personally I think can be really helpful in helping people organise their lives. What do they need? What techniques do they need to make life easier for themselves? Behaviour therapy, straightforward, come from the work of Skinner on operant conditioning work, sort of looking at, this works, that doesn't work. Star charts are a part of behaviour therapy. Lots of parents use them for different things and they can be really useful. There can be other more community-based models such as parent training and education programmes. And I feel like there's more of a social model where we look at, let's accept people who are different, who think differently from the mainstream way of thinking. Let's accept that into the world, and I quite like that social model. I quite like the idea that we stop discriminating against people that have got either ADHD or autism, whatever, especially in jobs and things like that, yeah. And the modern world doesn't make it easy for kids. It doesn't make it easy to raise any kind of kids, and it doesn't make it easy for kids or adults, which have a variety of different ways of seeing the world, etc. And I read Christine McGuinness saying that she had no hen party at 19 because she had no friends. It broke my heart, really, to read that. And this is the story of so many people with autism or indeed with ADHD. I really hope things change, and that we've seen it happen. I've certainly seen that happening in my family a bit. So please think twice before you don't employ somebody because you think they're a bit weird, or don't ask them out for a drink or whatever. Have some empathy and think the way one path in the world isn't everybody's. And actually there's a great idea that maybe people with autism or ADHD are essential for the human community to work, because you need somebody with a million ideas. You need somebody who's really going to focus down on something. We need all these different ways of thinking. And I even read a guy with autism saying the autistic brain was the next evolutionary advance of humanity, which I quite like that idea. And Johnny Vegas said he's no regrets that he's led a charmed life to him, and he seems a very likeable, talented guy, full of empathy. He's absolutely solid defence of the NHS. Made me think he was a really decent guy, and maybe these folk are trapped on a planet of idiots, and 8 billion idiots. Maybe they are trapped there, and certainly you can't say mainstream thinking's not made a mess of things, can you? And I prefer a world where we've got people who think differently. I do. I prefer that world. I think we're going to have a wee discussion there, aren't we?
I think we might be, yes.
Some of your news items.
Well, what would you like to discuss first?
The surrogacy thing was really interesting, wasn't it? Really, I had read that UK government, I don't know about the Scottish government, is being lobbied by the sort of private groups who want to start these agencies.
Businesses who want to make money out of surrogacy.
Yeah, and that worried me a bit. Yeah, that was a worry. Yeah, I mean, I believe it's true. We need to look that up. Somebody is a social worker in the adoption agency is looking that up for us. But I believe gay couples, guys, make very good adoptive parents when they adopt children, because adoptions do break down. They don't always succeed. And gay guys who adopt often children who have got disabilities and are older, not babies, and they have very high success rate. They really do. They keep those kids and make a really good job of looking after them. So to me, although it's a hard job, to me it's why going in the surrogacy when we've got loads of kids that need looking after that are out there and need families right now, and that you can do that legitimately, as you said, using adoption agencies which have got social workers checking everything's all right for them. Yeah.
Well, I think there are 2 or 3 different things going on here. One, I think, is that people want a physical connection with a child. Yeah, they do. And I think that's why the surrogacy route has been encouraged, although I do think often it is being encouraged by organisations who will make money out of it. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So there's a kind of push in a direction because there is money to be made here, and I think that's part of the issue.
That's the worry. I'd agree,
And also, I think because the controls are less than under adoption or even fostering, it's easier for people who might not, it might be an age thing. They might be considered too old, for example, to adopt or foster, or the checks into their background might bring up something which might to others seem pretty irrelevant, but to the adoption agency might be a red flag. Yeah. So the surrogacy issue means that there is less control. It's more, I don't know if under the radar is the right expression, but it's less controlled, it's less looked into, and I think that could be a bit dangerous for the child coming into the family.
I don't like the idea of no social worker involved in it. Are you kidding me? You've got to have, surely. We've got to have social workers looking over that.
Because unfortunately and sadly there are people in this world who want to have children for
their own reasons.
And not necessarily the right reasons. And there is a kind of modern, I get a feeling, sometimes you look at celebrity pages in these magazines and you think they want a baby because it's like having that little poodle in their handbag. That's not about, they don't want to bring up a child, they just want that thing added because they think that's what you're supposed to have, and therefore I want one of them. It's like having a pet poodle, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I did that myself.
Is not like that, as you know. So, but then I'm a bit. I can't say I'm totally anti-surrogacy. I just think it needs to be controlled.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I know we had the slight fear of renting out poor women's wombs, and the Handmaid's Tale thing came in. It was
I do think that is an element of what goes on, because I think if a company, several companies, go to the government and say, we're really keen to do this, and they put pressure on the government to change the legislation, they have an interest in that, and their interest is to provide surrogate mothers, essentially, who will rent out their wombs for a baby to be born, and ultimately will go from them to totally another couple to pick to bring up, and not always a couple. I think you can have single parent surrogacy as well. So these companies have a very controlled idea. They want to make money. They will. I had a look at an advert for a company, and it was all sweetness and light and wonderful, and having a baby as if it was just like as easy as, falling off a bike. Well, it's not as simple as that.
Was that in this country? They've got adverts in this country, or was it?
It was on the laptop, which I can't get into the internet. I can't show you just now. But when I went in to look at surrogacy, that was the first thing that came up, was a company which was working to provide surrogate parents. So
I know we've got adverts that are sent to people, to women to come and give their eggs, young women to come and give their eggs. And it looked very glossy. It's all easy, all great. But I mean, I've been through that. That's one hell of a job. You're on medication which causes all sorts of problems for you. It's not exactly as easy as it looked, as they were making it look,
There is another aspect of this, which is that often there's a clinic, there's a doctor in charge, usually a male doctor, and there have been several cases where the male doctor has used his own sperm to provide the surrogate with a partner, and in the end, then that doctor has often had 200 children,
which obviously
and
creates difficulty.
I think that does create a lot of difficulties when these children find out. So the proposal now is, the birth mother's name is erased from the birth certificate. They don't know then. The child, when it grows up, won't be able to go back and say, I want to meet my mother, my natural mother. They won't get to meet their natural siblings. There's a whole load of other issues, and it might be, depending on the proximity of these things, that they may be working in an office with their half-brother, half-sister. There's all sorts of issues.
When you think of all those rights for adopted children have been enshrined in law now, all that stuff. So I feel like it's another avenue where we need to look at whether or not the child has got these rights, and as well as they have if they've been adopted. Yeah, I would say that's a fair enough point. Yeah.
So I think it needs
some research.
One of our viewers asked if we would be looking into doing a longer piece on it, and it might be worthwhile maybe asking for Surrogacy Concern to send us someone to have a chat with about it,
or for anybody
and for people with a different view to also put their
who've had it and it's been successful for them. And I don't know if we're going to talk about the wind one, are we? Since it makes you snigger.
Because it makes me Well, as I said when I was talking about that earlier, and I just find it fascinating that they're introducing wind farm technology to power oil and gas rigs, which are the fossil fuels that the wind farm is there to prevent. It just
it's only one part of it, though. I think in general we think it's pretty fabulous that Scotland is going to be moving forward with this technology, which is revolutionary, really, isn't it? So.
I know. I do know that, and you sort of you want Scotland to prosper.
Yeah,
absolutely. But do you want us just to jump into bed with any business? I'm not against wind farms. That is not what I mean. And I do think you can't go very far in this country without seeing one of those spiral things jumping out of place. So
the offshore ones are massive. They're huge.
They're massive.
They're fabulous. I suppose there's lots of things about it. It'd be nice if they were made in their shipyards and all sorts of stuff. There will be. There's lots of things that I'm sure the Scottish Government is considering.
I also find it interesting that it's all happening in Scotland because we're the bit of the UK that gets all the wind.
Yes.
But also the bit that gets all the oil and gas.
Yeah, we have,
electricity, water. We wouldn't even get any whiskey and all the other. And then I did say recently there was a report that in parts of, I think it was Fife, they want to put in a massive big...
the electricity.
Electricity pylons, which will take electricity from Scotland down to, because they don't have that resource.
And
we get charged more. We get charged more for our own electricity, which goes to the national grid. This is one of my bugbears.
And actually, that was a really good thing that you put on Facebook page there, folks. Please, if you're in Fife area, have a look there because there's a consultation coming up. So get your thoughts into that there.
Because they're saying we want to build this pipeline. Well, you know how disruptive that's going to be.
Yeah.
And it shows you this big long pipeline running to the coast. And you just think, so are people going to lose their houses? Will farmland, what will be impacted by that?
They need to be consulted.
Insertion of that tunnel. So
yeah.
there's a whole load of issues around the whole of the environmental situation with wind farms, with all the other forms of energy as well, actually.
Yeah. We could be doing our own energy minister, couldn't we, Eli? Go on, what's another one of your stories then?
Oh, gosh. Well,
anyone you want to mention?
Well, let's mention this one, which wasn't on the news, actually.
Yeah.
But, however, free movement in Europe was offered to young people up to the age of, I think, the 30, 18, the 18 to 30 club. Youth mobility scheme for people aged between 18 and 30. The EU Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, was keen on this, said it would be good for young people, both sides of the channel. The UK government tutted and said, no. We left the UK for a reason, and one of the reasons was that we weren't having our young people travelling about the UK. I mean, this is the truth. I'm not making it up.
What was their argument for it?
Saying that Brexit had ended free movement and that the UK has no desire to reopen the conversation.
Oh dear.
So it looks like, but it's not guaranteed, that the next UK Prime Minister will be Sir Keir Starmer. So will Labour rescue this scheme? Well, no, they won't. A Labour spokesperson said that Labour has no plans for a youth mobility scheme. I watched this discussion on politics on the BBC just yesterday, actually. This woman was saying, oh, no, we're not going to go down that road. And I'm thinking to myself, really, why are you doing everything that the Tories are doing? Why are you not trying to say, actually, we are the party that is interested in what's going to help with our young people? We were the generation that got the advantage of being able to move about flexibly in Europe, but we're not going to pass that on to our own children and grandchildren.
And yet, when you look at the figures, we talk about Brexit, we're going to actually, more people have come into Britain after Brexit than they have before. So Tories are just giving this smoke screen of, we're ending immigration, vote for us, we're the anti-immigration party. But actually, more people, because obviously they're bringing people in from all sorts of countries, because we have a care crisis, a health crisis, that's all that, and that's and the usual hotel and catering industry, crisis sort of stuff. So it seems like it's just a big, like, I don't know, a little bit of razzmatazz. Look at us, we're so fabulous. We're not going to backstep
because
on Brexit.
The Tories are so influenced by the 1922 committee, who are essentially a group of
I think we better end this here before everyone gets too riled up.
Their own views on these matters, but they want us to go back to some dark age.
Maybe. She could be, allegedly.
Upper sunlit lands that never actually existed.
We should probably end this now. Is there anything we want to say before?
No, you can go.
Well, just to say, we talked a little bit about nuclear war or nuclear weapons in Scotland last week, and we have got a very well informed listener who came on and said, we know quite a lot of information he had about Iran's nuclear possibility. So he's doing a report for us, and I'll give you that next week. We also did sing Ding Dong Dolly because it was Jim McLean who wrote that song. It was his birthday on Sunday. I don't know what age he was. I think he might have been about 86. One of the last remaining Glasgow Guild songwriters, and we sung that for his birthday on Sunday, and we're going to put that up on our YouTube channel whenever our producer gets round to doing it. He's going to kill us for that one.
Can I just put in a little bit non-controversial stuff about Paisley? Paisley apparently is the place to be.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This week and this weekend there's a food and drink festival, and there's a literary festival to which I will be going on Sunday. And lots of things going on there. Check out the website pages for what's to do in Paisley, and you'll find out more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we might even have Sean Moore talking to us at some point, who used to be the Paisley Macker, in fact might still be. Definitely get to the Paisley one. And also, can I just say, I saw Nye yesterday at the Glasgow Film Theatre, the National Theatre's production of Nye, with Michael
Michael
Sheen, I keep giving his name out. That he's
famous Welsh actor.
Yeah, and actress.
Stars with David Tennant on.
Oh, yeah. And he's very into Welsh independence as well, and it was amazing, great, to hear about. Finally, we get some fabulous theatre about this magnificent Welshman, Nye, and actually lots and lots of stuff about his wife, Jenny Lee, and how much she influenced his ideas about healthcare.
From Shots and
Aye, and represented is it Lanarkshire? Lanarkshire, yeah, great, yeah. Worth going to see if it's about that one, I would say. And remember, folks, please talk to us on the website. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you've got anything to tell us about, you can email us on info@newsforscotland.org. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.